Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Emily Aerosmith, and I'm the Director of Research and Programs from the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum is a national nonprofit organization that connects the apprenticeship community. And we have a commitment to diversity and inclusion. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, especially on today, where we're thinking about truth and reconciliation, it's customary to acknowledge the traditional territory or ancestral lands of the Indigenous peoples. And we are meeting virtually today. So I would like to acknowledge that the Indigenous peoples are the traditional stewards of the lands and waters where each of us is attending the meeting this afternoon. CAF recognizes the Indigenous landscape of Canada is broad and encompasses many different First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. And on this day where we're thinking about truth and reconciliation, we would like to encourage you to think about your intentions to disrupt and dismantle colonialism beyond this territorial acknowledgement. And today I would like to share that I have been thinking about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action. And in thinking about this project today on greening the economy and the impact on skilled trades in Canada, I've been thinking a lot about call to action number 92, which a part of this call to action says that we must ensure that Indigenous peoples have equitable access to jobs, to training and education opportunities in the corporate sector, and that Indigenous communities must gain long-term sustainable benefits from economic development projects. So number 92 is the call to action that I'm thinking about today. And I hope that you are all reviewing the calls to action and thinking about what you can do as well to support truth and reconciliation efforts in Canada. At this point, I'd like to pass it over to Laura from the Future Skills Center, who's going to give more of an introduction. Laura?
Thank you so much, Emily. Sounds okay?
It sounds good.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Also, thanks for the acknowledgement of the Day of Truth and Reconciliation this morning. I sent my two kids off to school in orange shirts, and it was another chance for us to talk about the history of residential schools in this country, the hurt that that's caused and the lasting impacts that that still has today. And it was actually my daughter that reminded me that, you know, in talking about these things, that's the truth part of truth and reconciliation. And just to echo Emily's sentiments, that I hope you all take time to reflect today on this and about how we move towards reconciliation, both in our personal and our professional lives. So as Emily said, I'm here representing the Future Skills Center. We opened our doors in 2019 with funding from the Government of Canada. We're based at Toronto Metropolitan University, and we're a consortium. We're made up of Magnet and the Diversity Institute that are also housed at TMU, but we're also include the Conference Board of Canada and Blueprint ADE, which is an evaluation firm. And our mission is really to conduct research and generate insights about how we're going to position Canadians to thrive in the future of work. We're really dedicated to understanding the here and now to prepare for the challenges as well as the opportunities ahead. Our approach to all of this is very collaborative. We work with a range of partners across Canada, employers, labor, educational institutions, training partners, governments, community-based organizations. And the collaboration is crucial because preparing for the future of work is certainly not anything that a single entity can accomplish on its own. Evidence and data are critical to the work of the Future Skills Center. We invest in skills development innovation pilots and research. We invest in evaluating the impact of those pilots, in looking across to pull out insights from all of that work, and scaling and expanding the impact of the most promising approaches. And to date, we've funded over 400 research and innovation projects, related to skills and training with more than 3,100 partners across the country. And we do all this because our labor markets are under incredible pressure from a number of trends. Obviously, the big one continues to be the changes to tariffs with the US as well as other major players like China. All of this changing long-standing patterns of international trade and cooperation. And we're seeing the real consequences of these changes for workers and employers in the steel and the automotive industry, and knock-on effects across the country the longer they go on, most recently contributing to the higher youth unemployment that we saw over the summer. In response to this uncertainty and the changing relationships with international partners, the Government of Canada announced a range of efforts, including enabling free trade and labor mobility across Canada. There was a historic investment in the Canadian Armed Forces, and the creation of 2 new offices to expedite projects of national significance, as well as the building of affordable housing at scale. And these investments give us an opportunity to dismantle some of the barriers that have been impacting our prosperity for decades. But significant parts of the success depend on the availability of skilled and resilient workers, especially skilled tradespeople. Even before these announcements, across mining, electricity, and construction, we're anticipating needing hundreds of thousands of workers. But there are some serious questions about whether we're going to have the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. The federal government recently injected billions of dollars into the Canadian skills development and training system, and we know that every province and territory is trying to increase the number of skilled tradespeople, diversifying who's moving into those roles, but we actually don't know enough about what's really working. On top of all of that, we've got an aging population. It's impacting every region, every sector in Canada, including in the trades. Everyone's concerned about the looming wave of retirements, the fewer number of workers we have to fill those roles. And we've made some big changes to our immigration system over the last little while, and it's forcing a range of actors to really get creative to address some of those skills and labor gaps. And amidst all of those changes, we have to keep in mind that we've got long-standing challenges with the integration of skills and experiences of newcomers that predate the current moment. On top of this, layered on top of this, is the acceleration of artificial intelligence, and there's a growing divide between, the folks and the firms who know how to use it and the ones that don't. And that's a major issue in our country, where the large majority of businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises who have long been slower adopters of technology and really tend to underinvest in training for their workers. In our most recent survey on employment and skills in the spring, we saw 37% of Canadian workers were using AI at work already to help with tasks, which is up from 28% just the previous summer. But that 2/3 of those people are getting no guidance, no training from their employers on how to use it. So, amidst all of this complexity, we're also making a longer-term transition to a lower carbon economy. But one of the most pressing challenges in that is the need for skilled workers. Who's going to create the technology? Who's going to build the infrastructure? Who's going to maintain the electric grids that are going to drive us towards those goals? And that's really why we're here today. The work that CAF has commissioned here has done is important. It looks at increasing demand for training in apprenticeship programs as we make that transition. And even though our path towards a lower carbon economy isn't crystal clear, the broader uncertainty impacting our path on electrical vehicles, for example, we do know that construction, manufacturing, utilities, energy production, transportation, and mining are going to be integral pieces of those major nation building projects. And so, the conclusions that we've reached here are we hear those echoed in other sectors. But I don't want to give away the findings. So I'm going to turn it over to the researchers and let them share that with you, and just want to say thank you again so much for having me, and thanks to all of you for coming and engaging with this important piece of research.
The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum worked with Prism Economics to do this piece of work. And at this point, I'd like to pass it over to Dominique so she can walk us through some of the research findings. Dominique?
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Emily. And thanks, Laura, for that opening as well. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dominique. I am a managing consultant with Prism Economics and Analysis. And in today's presentation, I'm going to start by outlining the project objective as well as our research approach. And then I'm going to walk you through the key findings from the two main components of this research, which were the literature review as well as the labor market outlook. And then finally, I'm going to wrap up with just a brief summary and share some considerations for some future research that can build on this work as well. So in response to the growing concerns about the severe impacts of global warming, Canada has committed to ambitious climate change policies. So as outlined in the 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan, the federal government aims to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reach net zero by 2050. And to support this goal, industrial sectors across Canada are adapting their operations to lower their carbon footprint. So the aim of this report was to better understand the supply-demand dynamics for skilled trades that are critical to the green economy. So in particular, we wanted to assess how well the current workforce is positioned to meet this evolving demand. And while other studies have examined the impact of decarbonization within specific industries, this report takes more of a cross-sectoral view. Additionally, rather than focusing on just occupations, it centers the demand on certified skilled trades workers, so meaning those holding a certificate of qualification, and identifies where pressures may emerge within the apprenticeship training system as this demand grows. So this report was guided by 5 key research questions. So how will Canada's plan to cut emissions impact the demand for skilled workers in trades? Which apprenticable skilled trades occupations will be in greater demand as the economy advances towards decarbonization? What other related skilled trades occupations, those without apprenticeship programs, will also see increased demand? How will these changes impact training needs for apprenticeable trades? And which trades are at risk of falling behind demand based on the current number of certified workers? So these questions help shape the analysis and focus the report. So getting into the methodology. So to identify the green trades in this analysis, we use the U.S. Department of Labor's ONET classification of green occupations as the basis. Then we consulted additional resources to validate and then refine this list. This included Employment and Social Development Canada's list of green occupations, as well as relevant occupational forecasts from Canadian industry groups. Alongside this, we conducted a literature review of emerging clean energy technologies as well as decarbonization processes within key sectors and identified the trades that are closely linked to those knowledge areas. Because ONET uses the U.S. occupational classification system, we developed a correspondence table to then map those codes to the Canadian occupational classification system. So this allowed us to accurately match the U.S. identified green jobs with Canadian apprenticeable skilled trades programs. Once the relevant trades were identified, we analyzed the current labor market conditions of those trades. So this included examining the job vacancy to unemployment ratio to gauge labor market tightness, as well as looking at the trends in apprenticeship registration and completion to assess supply. And then finally, we applied Prism's Cantrack model to estimate the future demand for certified workers within these green trades alongside the projected supply of new journey persons. And we examined 2 scenarios in this project. So we looked at a baseline scenario, which reflected current policies and market conditions, as well as a green scenario, and that assumed stronger climate action in line with Canada's net zero emission goals. So this slide breaks down the underlying assumptions within each of those scenarios. So the baseline scenario assumes a continuation of current trends. So it reflects steady moderate growth with green technologies, and it aligns more with historical investment patterns in this area. So it does not include any accelerated climate action or new policy interventions or what-if projections. So the key drivers within the scenario include existing investment in green infrastructure, so things like wind farms and small modular reactors, as well as ongoing building maintenance activity. The green scenario represents a more ambitious decarbonization pathway. So it reflects the impacts of policies introduced to help Canada reach net zero by 2050. So this would include large-scale building retrofits, electrification of transport through EV adoption, as well as the expansion of renewable energy. So that would include wind, solar, and battery storage technologies. So while the baseline captures a more moderate policy neutral trajectory, the green scenario reflects a much stronger policy push and more aggressive transition timeline. So I just want to begin by defining what we mean by green jobs and green skills, as these terms are quite foundational to the rest of this report and analysis. So the literature defines green jobs as roles that directly contribute to reducing the human environmental footprint and protecting the environment, including activities related to emissions reduction. Green skills, on the other hand, are defined a bit more broadly within the literature, but for the purpose of this report, we define green skills as the knowledge and technical abilities required to perform new tasks or perform existing tasks differently with the goal of reducing the environmental impact. Now, while the literature does mention emerging job titles related to greening, such as sustainable construction manager or electric vehicle technician, which may require skilled trades training, we're not seeing clear evidence of entirely new green occupations emerging. Instead, the research suggests that decarbonization is driving increased demand for existing skilled trade occupations, some of which will require new skills to meet evolving technologies and practices. So the sectors that are most involved in reducing greenhouse gases in the net zero transition include construction, manufacturing, renewable energy, transportation, and mining. So the construction sector plays a central role in Canada's climate plan, especially through green building projects and energy efficient retrofits of existing infrastructure. So this is creating new demand for trades such as electricians, who are needed for energy efficient systems and EV infrastructure, HVAC technicians and pipe trades, and that's supporting more sustainable heating and cooling, as well as water management systems. Welders, who are essential for building clean energy infrastructure such as wind farms, and then supervisors, who will be responsible for overseeing green building projects, as well as the use of eco-friendly materials and technologies. Within manufacturing, the automotive sector is undergoing rapid change, especially with the shift to electric vehicles and battery production. So this is generating demand for electricians and industrial electricians, welders, machinists, industrial mechanics, as well as manufacturing managers. As Canada ramps up investment in solar and wind energy, new opportunities are emerging within the renewable energy sector. Key trades in demand here include electricians, as well as wind turbine technicians and solar panel technicians. And these workers will be involved in everything from installation to ongoing operations and maintenance of renewable infrastructure. And while wind turbine technicians and solar technicians are not apprenticeable trade programs, they often do require the skills and qualifications of certified workers. The transportation sector is shifting due to the electrification of vehicles. For automotive service technicians, this means learning new diagnostic and repair skills needed for EV systems. And there's also an increased role for electricians in building out as well as maintaining EV charging infrastructure. The mining sector is going to be essential in the green economy because it supplies the critical minerals needed for EV batteries as well as renewable technologies. So this will boost demand for trades like industrial mechanics, electricians, welders, as well as heavy equipment operators. So each of these sectors here employs skilled tradespeople. Some of these trades, as you can see, are in demand across multiple sectors, which may result in increased competition when it comes to hiring. Many of these roles will remain similar in title, but will require new or upgraded technical skills to work with new technologies, which we'll get into a bit on the next slide. So while many existing trades will see increased demand due to decarbonization, some trades will require new skills and competencies to keep pace with emerging technologies, practices, as well as environmental standards. So there's a growing recognition that climate literacy is an essential component of the green transition within the skilled trades. So this includes understanding how the work being performed within a specific trade impacts the environment and emphasizes that tradesperson's potential in contributing to meeting Canada's climate goals. So this knowledge empowers tradespeople to work cohesively on projects, and it goes beyond just the technical skills to understanding why addressing climate change matters. On the technical side, labor market stakeholders need to be proactive in assessing the extent of training needs for each trade. They will need to provide the necessary upskilling as demand for apprentices and journey persons ramps up in each sector. So this training can take on various forms. It could be revising curricula in existing apprenticeship programs delivered, or it can be creating modules that target specific skill sets for workers that are already certified. Some of this work is already being done, especially to increase green literacy and revise training to incorporate green skills. The Canadian Green Building Council is an example who have been actively developing training programs or modules that's focused on green building concepts within the construction sector. Skills Plan is another example that's been developing modules in collaboration with the Canadian Building Trades Union to integrate climate literacy into unionized construction trades and the education system. Some post-secondary institutions are also now offering micro-credentials for registered apprentices and certified workers. Automotive service technician is an example of a trade that will require upskilling as the sector is electrified and the occupation sees changing tasks. So for example, there are electrical hazards associated with working on battery technology that require extensive training in electrical theory as well as safety practices. And we're seeing a number of colleges now offer zero emission vehicle technician training and certificates, which complement the existing skill set of a qualified automotive technician. So this slide outlines the scope of the labor market outlook. So the analysis is focused on green skilled trades. So these are apprenticeable trades that are expected to see growing demand as a result of decarbonization. In total, the analysis includes 26 apprenticeable trades. In addition, we looked at 8 related occupations that aren't tied to a formal apprenticeship program, but are still highly relevant. These are roles that often require similar skill set or play key supervisor or support roles within the green economy. So these trades and occupations were identified using a combination of the ONET data, the literature review, as well as a scan of occupational forecasts from relevant industry groups. And finally, it's just important to note that this analysis reflects national level trends. So it doesn't break down regional or provincial differences, which can vary significantly based on local policies, industries, as well as infrastructure projects. This slide looks at the current labor market conditions for green trades. So the unemployment to job vacancy ratio is an indicator of labor market tightness, and it provides insights into the balance between labor demand and supply for specific occupations. So when there is a low ratio, it suggests a tight labor market, meaning that there are more vacancies than unemployed workers. A high ratio, on the other hand, indicates a looser labor market with more unemployed workers than available jobs. So as of 2024, there were 1.5 unemployed people for each job opening, reflecting moderate tightness in the labor market for green trades. As you can see in the chart on the left, for several trades, this ratio was notably lower at less than 1 person per job vacancy. So listed there in red are the 5 trades with the lowest ratios, and that include industrial electrician, power system electrician, heating, refrigeration, AC mechanic, metal fabricators, and machinists. So this highlights a particularly constrained supply for these select green trades. In the same chart, we see other trades that have a notably higher ratio with 2 or more unemployed persons per vacancy. So this suggests less recruiting challenges for these occupations. So turning to the pipeline of skilled trades, apprenticeship is one of the primary entry points for skilled trades professionals within Canada. In recent years, apprenticeship programs have seen significant expansion. In 2023, which is the latest data available, national new registrations in green trades reached a record high, increasing 18% from the previous year. And this momentum is likely attributed to government funding and initiatives that have increased the number of new apprentices entering skilled trades in recent years. Apprentice retention does remain a strong focus, though. Completion levels have remained relatively flat post-pandemic. However, recent growth in new apprenticeship registrations that we're seeing is expected to result in higher completions over the outlook, provided that completion rates remain close to their historical average. So while the supply pipeline is strengthening through the expansion of apprenticeship, several trades are already experiencing labor market tightness, which could pose challenges in meeting the growing demand driven by the green transition. So before going into the outlook, I'm going to give a bit of a background on the CANTRAC system, just for anyone that's not familiar. So the supply-demand analysis in this report is based on the Canadian system for tracking apprenticeship qualifications. So since 2013, PRISM has been working in collaboration with CAF to develop and refine a system for assessing demand and supply of trade certifications. Rather than traditional occupational projections, the CANTRAC system tracks demand for individual certifications. The system then compares demand to projected trends in new registrations, as well as the likely completions in order to identify where there might be potential imbalances. As you are probably aware, the skilled trades workforce is comprised of both certified and non-certified workers. The central question the system addresses is how many new journey persons are needed to maintain the current share of certified workers in the skilled trades workforce. So this slide details the key components of the supply and demand in the CANTRAC model. So on the demand side, the model estimates how many new journey persons will be needed based on 2 main factors. So one is the employment growth, and the second is the replacement demand. So this accounts for workers retiring or leaving the workforce due to other age-related reasons. And then we look at demand for 2 groups. We look at the principal trade, which refers to the skilled trade that has an apprenticeable program, as well as related occupations. And these are jobs that require or benefit from the same certification, but don't have their own apprenticeship program tied to it. So for example, this would be a managerial role within the same field. So because individuals with trade certifications often move between jobs over the course of their careers, we also include the related occupations in order to capture the additional demand resulting from occupational mobility and attrition. So the total demand for training is the number of journey persons needed to maintain stable certification rates across both the principal and related trades. On the supply side, there are 3 key outputs. So the first is new registrations. So new registrations are projected based on expected employment growth, as well as historical registration to employment ratios. The second is projected completions, and these are estimated using historical registrations, as well as a calculated completion rate for each trade. And then finally, the completion rate, and this is the proportion of apprentices who complete their programs, adjusted for the length of the program as well as the variability in the time to complete. So together, these supply and demand components help us understand whether the supply of new journey persons is keeping pace with demand for certified workers. Okay, so this slide outlines the projections under the baseline scenario, which again reflects a continuation of current economic trends and policy settings without major new green transition initiatives. So under the baseline scenario, between 2025 and 2034, it's estimated that over 177,000 apprentices will need to be trained as well as certified across the 26 trades that are included in this report to meet expected demand. About 1/4 of this demand is expected to be driven by new employment growth, while the rest is due to retirements. And assuming that new apprenticeship registrations and completion rates stay close to the current levels, we do see that most trades are in a strong position to meet demand for certified workers under this scenario. However, there are some notable exceptions. The analysis indicates that several trades may fall short of certification targets, potentially leading to a decline in the pool of certified workers over time. So the trades at greatest risk under the baseline scenario include boilermaker, construction craft worker, and machinist. There's also 5 trades where supply and demand are very closely aligned. However, a shift in either employment demand or apprentice completion rates could tip this balance, putting these trades at risk of falling short of certification needs. So even in a scenario without accelerated green transition activity, targeted monitoring and support may be needed to ensure supply keeps pace with demand within specific trades. So this slide focuses on the green scenario, which again reflects a future where Canada accelerates its efforts towards net zero emissions and expands investment in clean energy, electrification, as well as energy efficient infrastructure. So under this scenario, more than 264,000 apprentices are expected to be needed to be trained and certified in the trades covered in this report between now and 2034. So this represents nearly a 50% increase compared to that baseline scenario. Skilled trades employment is projected to grow across both scenarios, as you can see in the chart on this slide. But in the green scenario, growth accelerates notably. And this is stemming, again, from increased demand for building retrofits, the transition to electric vehicles, as well as the expansion of renewable energy construction and maintenance. However, this increase in demand is not evenly distributed across all trades. There are 2 trades that stand out as being heavily impacted, one being construction electrician, the other being refrigeration and AC mechanics. So together, these 2 trades account for nearly half of the additional employment demand within the green scenario. And this reflects their critical role in building and maintaining energy efficient systems. And electricians in particular are anticipated to be heavily impacted by decarbonization. And this is driven by the demand for electrification that impacts multiple sectors of the economy. So this slide presents the results of a risk assessment that looks at how well positioned different trades are to meet future labor market demand, both under the baseline and green scenarios. So this assessment is based on 3 key factors. The first is the current labor market tightness, which is measured by the unemployment to job vacancy ratio. The second is the projected balance under the supply and demand for certified workers under the baseline scenario. And the third is the projected balance between supply and demand under the more ambitious green scenario. So that overall risk rating that you see in the last column reflects how these components interact, with trades considered most at risk if they're already experiencing tight labor market conditions and are also projected to have an insufficient supply of certified workers to meet demand in either scenario. So the results point to several trades that face high risk of future supply gaps. So these include glazer, industrial electrician, laborer, so construction craft worker, power system electrician, machinist, and refrigeration and AC mechanic. So these trades exhibit both low unemployment to job vacancy ratios, as well as an insufficient supply to meet the elevated demand within the green scenario. So this suggests that there may be a significant strain that could emerge without increased focus on training efforts to improve retention rates within these trades. A larger group of trades falls into the moderate risk category. So these trades include boilermaker, construction electrician, insulator, industrial mechanics, among others. Here, for these trades in the moderate risk category, demand is expected to rise, but the supply gap is less acute. So in this category, trades may have sufficient intake to meet the increased green demand, but the current tight labor market conditions may make it difficult to find skilled workers when they're needed. And although some of these trades may not face critical challenges imminently, they represent areas where proactive measures could help to prevent long-term imbalances. Now, the final group, trades at low risk, these generally have a more balanced labor market, or they have an apprenticeship intake that is currently sufficient to meet green demands. So these trades include carpenter, sheet metal worker, and steam fitters, pipe fitters, among others. And in these occupations, we're seeing that current supply appears to be better aligned with anticipated demand, but still ongoing monitoring is important for these trades, especially as green technologies and project demands continue to evolve. So while overall demand for skilled trades is expected to rise significantly, we're not seeing the risks being evenly distributed. So targeted interventions, specifically for those high-risk trades, will be critical in order to ensure that Canada has the workforce it needs in order to support a successful green transition. So decarbonization and the greening of the economy are expected to drive significant demand for skilled trades in Canada. At the same time, new technologies for cleaner production are reshaping the nature of the work as well as the skills that are required across many trades. Under an accelerated green scenario, more than 264,000 newly certified workers are estimated to be needed by 2034, representing nearly a 50% increase in demand compared to the baseline scenario. The analysis highlights several trades that are likely to face recruitment challenges for certified workers. These occupations are already experiencing tight labor market conditions and are projected to fall short of meeting future demand within the more ambitious climate scenario. So overall, this report points to where supply and demand imbalances are most likely to emerge and where targeted adjustments through either training capacity, certification support, or workforce planning could help maintain alignment as the green economy evolves. Moving forward, labor market stakeholders will need to regularly assess training needs and future demand to ensure that programs stay aligned with this evolving skills landscape. And a coordinated approach, which involves government, industry, as well as training providers, will be key to meeting this objective. So future research can build on this report by exploring the following priority areas. So future research could look at governance models that enable a more coordinated action and harmonized training standards. So this might involve exploring options such as a National Green Skills Council or developing shared frameworks for curriculum updates or training investments, as well as workforce planning. There's also potential to investigate strategies for reskilling and upskilling workers from occupations that may decline, such as those that are heavily involved in resource-intensive industries like oil and gas, in order to help fill in growing demand within the skilled trades. As demand for green trades grows, future research may want to explore how to better attract and retain underrepresented groups. So this could include examining recruitment and retention strategies for high demand trades, as well as approaches to ensure that the green economy investments benefits both local and Indigenous communities where those projects are based. Future work could also examine the capacity of Canada's education and training system to meet evolving labor market needs. So this could involve assessing both the training seat availability by training research region, but also the ability of employers to be able to take on apprentices. And then also investigating how to better align curricula with these emerging green technologies. The national level scenario that was presented here can be enhanced by a more targeted regional analysis, especially as select provinces have more concentration on some industrial sectors than others. In addition, the report assumes that the current trends in registration and completion rates are sustained. So examining the impact of falling new registrations or completions could help policymakers anticipate potential supply gaps as well. And then future research could also expand the scope to examine demand for skilled trades through a broader lens of the circular economy. So this would provide a more holistic lens to greening and go beyond decarbonization as it relates to air emissions, as was the focus of this report, and include impacts of greening of land and water pollution. So these are just a few areas where future research could help deepen our understanding and strengthen workforce readiness for the green transition. So with that, I'm going to wrap up there, and thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions as well. I'm joined by my colleagues Sabita and Adam as well, who might want to jump in if they any questions that they can provide insights on as well.
Yeah, we do have a question, Dominique. So around electricians, someone is just wanting clarification there. So on the EV vehicles, just to clarify, are electricians working or helping automotive service techs work on those EV vehicles at this point, or is it more that automotive service techs probably are going to need some training in electrical in order to work on those vehicles?
Yeah, from what we've seen, electricians are more concentrated within the infrastructure side of things and the smart grid, and making sure that the EV technology is working on that side and maintaining it. As automotive service technician, it's more upskilling to make sure that they can still provide the service needed to maintain an electric vehicle.
And was that a knowledge that you learned from industry, or the person is just asking if there would be a report or written source?
Yes, so Focal provides a lot of labor market information specific to automotive manufacturing. Sabita has worked specifically with Focal in a lot of her work, so she can maybe provide a bit more insight. But yes, I can, Sabita, maybe can you put in the chat, if you're able to, a link to Focal's website?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Oh. Okay.
And did the research find any impact on the changes made to the Red Seal occupational standards to incorporate climate literacy and technical skills and knowledge related to green concepts?
Yeah, I think that was implemented in 2023, if I'm correct in that. That wasn't necessarily within the scope of this project.
Right.
But I'm sure that was a really great starting point, especially coming from a Red Seal organization. But I think a lot of provinces are doing their own work at this time, trying to enhance green skills within their own programs. So while that's probably helped with the coordinated approach, we haven't seen any impact to date.
Okay. And CAF did do a survey for the Canadian Building Trades Unions that indicated that knowledge of climate literacy among apprentices was pretty low. So that's definitely something we need to work on. And that's what the committee who reviewed this report said as well. So we were working with Dr. John Calvert from Simon Fraser University, and he thought climate literacy for workers was an area that could be expanded upon in future work.
I put the link for the Focal website, and that was a 6-year ESDC funded project that PRISM was involved in with CSTEC and the Automotive Policy Research Center. There is a vast number of resources on there, we were early in the game, so there are a lot of newbies bringing out reports, writing about things we already did write about. So if you are interested, there's tons of stuff on skill trades, labor forecasts, and such like that.
Awesome, thank you. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dominique, for that presentation and walking us through those findings. We will be following up and providing everyone with the PowerPoint and the taped recording of this webinar. And stay tuned. The report will be available on the CAF website. You can create a free account to access the reports and resources there, and you can take a deeper look at the analysis that we have done. Oh, yes, Dean has just put forward a comment. That is kind of interesting. Yeah. So Dominique, are your thoughts, or did you think about when you were doing the research, what about a lowered emphasis on green going forward?
Yeah, so we did with our green scenario, obviously the timing and pacing of decarbonization and electrification EV adoption does remain fluid, especially with the regulatory developments and consumer intake with what's happening right now. For the scenario that we present in this report, the green scenario, the analysis was more to interpret the magnitude or the potential magnitude and direction of decarbonization and its impact on skilled trades demand to highlight where those pressure points would likely emerge. You know, similar to AI, we're not necessarily anticipating green technology to slow down. The pacing and the timing may shift over the next decade, especially with economic variables. But yeah, for this project specifically, we were anticipating that it's going to go forward, just obviously the pacing and timing may be more variable.
Yeah, exactly. And then someone's making a comment here. It just seems that a nimble, well-rounded trades training is going to be important to meet any future demand, because we don't quite know the way it's going to go right now with the policy.
Yes, definitely. The green climate literacy that you emphasize, Emily, is a really important starting point, as I provided a couple examples of organizations that are already trying to integrate that into current training to make sure that tradespeople have an understanding of why climate change and reducing emissions is important and why the work they're doing is important, also to try and get more people into skilled trades. I think there's some research too showing that people want to go into occupations that are more in the greening sphere. So highlighting that has also been really good for attracting individuals into the skilled trades. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the skilled trades community could probably work more with environmental organizations to align some of the messaging there, because a lot of these occupations, in fact, do need an apprenticeship as the foundation. Before you learn about heat pumps or wind turbines, you're going to need that basis in the trade first. And the common pathway to get in that trade is the apprenticeship pathway. So if we could work with environmental organizations and align more of our messaging, I think we could attract a lot of youth to these occupations. There's also some research to indicate, thinking about truth and reconciliation, that First Nations youth and adults would be very interested in environmental careers as well. So that's another opportunity where we could engage more Indigenous peoples in connecting with the skilled trades, if we promoted how that these can contribute to a green economy. And yeah, Dean Rogers from the Red Seal Secretariat has put a link in there that shares the standards so people can check it out. And the standards do talk about climate literacy. Great, perfect. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for taking time to participate in the webinar today, and we will be following up. The report is going to be available on the website. And just thanks so much to the Future Skills Center for supporting this work. It was extremely important, and thanks to our partners at Prism for doing this analysis for us. We really appreciate it.